The Colorado River is known by many as the force that carved out the Grand Canyon, but its ecology, the issues it faces, and its management are less known. The Colorado River is home to a variety of endemic fish, but these fish are being threatened by human use and invasive species. So, what are the management plans in place today that are helping the situation, and are these plans working, or should more resources and planning be put forward for the protection of this river and the fish that call it home? The fish in the Colorado River of most concern are the big four: the humpback chub, the Colorado pikeminnow, the razorback sucker, and the bonytail. Starting with the humpback chub, it was originally found in the Colorado River, the Green, and the Yampa. However, their range has been reduced. Today, this fish is found in five populations: four in the upper Colorado River Basin and one in the lower basin within the Grand Canyon. The humpback was listed as an endangered species back in 1967. Its population declined so drastically because of human water use, including dams and changes in the river flow. Back before the days of dams, the Colorado River flowed red and muddy. It often had spring flooding that would back into the tributaries, providing shallow floodplains for these native fish to spawn and reproduce. Today, the river flows blue and clear and rarely floods into floodplains due to the extreme management of water for human use. This has caused a rapid decline in the population, along with the introduction and effect invasive species have on this fish. But there is hope. In 2020, the chub was downlisted to just being threatened. There is still much work to be done, but what is being done thus far is working. The next fish is the Colorado pikeminnow, and it is my personal favorite. It is the largest minnow in North America, growing to lengths of up to 6 feet. It is protected under the Endangered Species Act, and unfortunately, unlike the humpback chub, this species has not recovered enough to be taken off the list or demoted to threatened. Back when settlers were coming to the Colorado River, this fish was considered a valuable food source and was often referred to as white salmon. This is likely one of the causes for its downfall, along with water management, dams, and invasive species. In the early 1900s, this fish was the Colorado River's top predator. Today, this fish is being outcompeted by invasive species like the smallmouth bass, a known voracious predator of the aquatic world. Today, wild specimens are only found in the Colorado and Green River, and a small population of reintroduced specimens in the San Juan River. They inhabit warm waters and are only contained in the upper basin today. Along with the giant theme, the razorback sucker is one of the largest suckers in North America, growing to 3 feet and living for more than 40 years. It is also on the endangered species list, being listed in 1991. But in 2021, there was a proposal to reclassify it due to promising evidence of the fish completing its life cycles throughout the Colorado River Basin. The sucker is known to traverse long distances to spawn, and dams have hindered this migration. Invasive species have also impacted the sucker by predating on the young of year fish before they have a chance to outgrow the non-natives. The boon in their population is thanks to extensive stocking measures of the species throughout the watershed and special timed releases of dams to wash the young fish downstream, which would normally occur in a natural, unimpeded environment. The last native fish we are discussing is the bonytail. This fish is the rarest on this list, being protected back in 1980. This fish was once common all across the Colorado River Basin, but by the time extensive fisheries surveys occurred, the fish had already been greatly depleted. As such, little is known about the species and its habitat requirements. We do know that they can live up to 50 years, grow to close to 2 feet, and primarily predate on insects, plankton, and plant matter. So what caused their downfall? It was again the same issues that plagued the previous species: dams, stream flow regulation, habitat modification, and predation by non-native species. But they have an additional threat: hybridization. Hybridization is dangerous, especially for species with low populations, because the bonytail will breed with, for example, the roundtail chub or even the humpback chub. This will make a 50-50 hybrid, but since there are more humpback chub in the river than bonytail, the hybrid will likely breed with one of these other species, becoming increasingly more one of the other species, slowly causing the extinction of the bonytail. Conservation for this species is ongoing, and some agencies are stocking the fish in multiple locations to help bolster the population and prevent extinction through hybridization. The native fish are very intriguing, and as we have discovered, are all threatened by invasive species. So what are these species? How did they get there, and why are they such an issue? There are many non-native species that have invaded this body of water, but the fish that cause the most problems are the smallmouth bass, walleye, and the northern pike. These fish are arguably the biggest obstacles to native fish recovery. These non-natives have thrived in the managed ecosystem that we have created in the Colorado River. This fish initially entered the system from human stocking, smallmouth bass in particular being a prized sport fish. These non-natives predate on the young of year native fish. All of the native fish, as with other species, start very small, but unlike other species, including the invasives, grow at a much slower rate, making them vulnerable to predation. The non-natives are being managed very heavily by a few different agencies and plans, but it is an ongoing battle. Policy and legislation are an important aspect to help our environment.
So what are the policies behind the management plans to help endangered native species? Well, back in 1973, the Endangered Species Act, or ESA, was enacted, which protects endangered native fish like the humpback chub. The ESA requires the state government to create and implement recovery plans for endangered species, which in this case includes measures to address the harm invasive species cause. One of the primary management plans is the Upper Colorado River Endangered Fish Recovery Program, which works as an ESA compliance.
This program aims to reestablish healthy populations of the Big Four while continuing to have water development. This recovery program is a public and private partnership including state-level partners like the Colorado Department of Natural Resources, Colorado Water Congress, and the state of Wyoming. There are also federal partners like the National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Reclamation, and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs. There are also private partners like Western Area Power Administration and nonprofits like the Nature Conservancy.
With the aid of all these partners, the Upper Colorado River Recovery Program helps to perform fieldwork, present findings, provide funding, and pass policy and legislation. One of the main goals of the program includes non-native fish management, and as such has created the Upper Colorado River Basin Non-Native and Invasive Aquatic Species Prevention and Control Strategy, and in which their strategies are eradication, control, and management. Eradication is the goal of this and should be for all invasive species management because it removes the need for further control and ongoing environmental and economic costs, however difficult it may be. Some of the ways the program combats invasive species are through
Electrofishing, which has become the primary way to remove and control non-native fish, while also providing samples and data of native fish. Pesticides and more appropriately piscicides have been used for small-scale spot treatments in order to eradicate non-native fish. However, pesticides are non-discriminatory and will kill any fish, including natives, where it is applied. Therefore, it is not readily used, especially in larger scale situations. Nets are also used, but again, because they are prone to bycatch of native fish, they are used minimally and only when necessary to maximize the removal of target invasives. Escapement screens have been installed on outlets of reservoirs or in stream channels to control escapement of non-native fishes from the reservoirs. With these screens, continual monitoring is required to confirm the usefulness and necessity of the screens. Exclusion barriers, similar to the screens, also prevent movement of invasive species, particularly into shallow ponds and backwaters for spawning. This prevents the larger non-natives from entering this habitat while allowing for native species to have increased success in spawning and recruitment of young of year fish. Mandatory harvest and monetary incentives have been implemented to encourage anglers to harvest non-salmonid sportfish, which targets the invasives in question. In Utah, it is even required to kill any smallmouth bass. Even with these incentives, it is unclear as to how successful they are seeing as smallmouth bass are a prized sport fish, and it tends to be taboo to harvest or kill this particular fish. Another major management plan is the Glen Canyon Dam Adaptive Management Program that is being conducted by the Bureau of Reclamation. Lake Powell, created by Glen Canyon Dam, is the terminus of the upper Colorado River Basin and is the primary barrier the fish must overcome to reach the lower portions of the Colorado River. The current focus of this management program is to look at smallmouth bass future flow options and high-flow experimental protocol. They are analyzing additional flow options at Glen Canyon Dam in response to non-native smallmouth bass and other invasives found directly below the dam. The goal of the changes in flow is to prevent the establishment of bass below Glen Canyon Dam by limiting successful spawning. Because it is a federal agency and has an environmental impact, even for a good cause, they must abide by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. This means they must create a Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, or SEIS, for the long-term experimental and management plan.
Because of this process, it will take time and it must be approved. Therefore, there are alternative plans. For this SEIS, there are 6. The fun thing about the NEPA process is that the plan is open to the public for a set amount of time, and this particular plan was recently published in the Federal Register back in February 2024. It is, however, already closed, but there are many different environmental impact statements that open regularly, and you can get involved and help inform different management plans.
But back to the Glen Canyon plan, the 6 alternatives are no action, where obviously nothing changes in their management of the dam. Cool mix alternative, which is designed to disrupt bass spawning by releasing water to maintain a daily average temperature below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The amount of water released would vary throughout the year due to natural fluctuations in water volume and temperature. The next is cool mix with flow spike alternative. This plan would do the same thing as the cool mix alternative while adding up to 3 36-hour flow spikes if enough water is available. The hope of the flow spike is to disrupt spawning of the invasive species in the warmer marginal habitats of the river. For the spike, as much water as possible would be released. Cold shock is the next potential plan, and this would include a short release of cold water aiming for temperature at 55 degrees Fahrenheit. This would disrupt bass spawning and hopefully kill off young of year bass. Similar to cool mix and flow spike, the next option is cold shock with flow spike. The alternative is the same as the cool mix flow spike, but at the colder temperature of the cold shock plan. The last option is a non-bypass alternative and is arguably the most interesting. For this plan, water would be released strategically to disrupt existing nests and spawning activities. To accomplish this, they will once a week release a short time of low flow immediately followed by a short duration of high flow. This will theoretically dry out the smallmouth bass nests as low flow and flush out any remaining nests with the high flow.
As mentioned before, the SEIS was just recently up for public comment, so there is nothing final yet on the management plan they will go with, but the final SEIS and the decision is anticipated to be available by early summer of 2024, which is just in the next few months. These were just 2 examples of management plans that are working on the recovery of endangered fish on the Colorado River, and it appears that these plans are working. Many of the native species are beginning to recover, but less is known on the non-native populations and their decline, but it is hopeful that it is working. If we continue to help the ecology of the Colorado River improve to something the way it looked before the dams, the native fish will continue to populate and thrive, and hopefully this will aid in pushing out the invasive fish and save the rare and endemic populations of the Grand Canyon. The Glen Canyon Dam Adaptive Management Program is very promising in aiding the recovery of the ecosystem, but it is still very new, and this plan should continue to be looked at for its viability. And the Upper Colorado River Endangered Fish Recovery Program has been successful, but it only had a 10-year lifespan and was set to sunset by 2023. At such time, the management of the species and their habitat would go back to the states of the Upper Colorado River Basin. Thankfully, the program was extended for 7 more years, so the recovery will continue to benefit the endangered fish, and perhaps in 7 more years, the fish will be recovered and all that will need to be done is protection as opposed to rehabilitation. This has been a wide-ranging overview of the native species of the Colorado River and the invasive species that threaten them, and the management plans in place to help save these fish and their effectiveness. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure, and now you can go out and tell everyone you know about the cool fish in the Colorado River and what is being done to save them.